This is AF451, Unit 3, Data Representation and Structure. Express numbers in binary, binary coded decimal, octal and hexadecimal. Binary is a 4-bit, 4 bits. Binary is, binary. A bit is 0 or 1. 4 bits equals 1 nibble. 8 bits equals 1 byte, 2 nibbles. 0 denary is represented in 8 bits. I know this. I know this. We have, describe and use 2's complement and sign magnitude to represent negative integers. We have a number of ways to represent negative binary numbers, 2 of which are considered below. In each case we use the most significant bit, the leftmost bit, to represent the minus sign. In what follows we are assuming that we are considering single byte. In 2's complement form, a 1 can be thought representing the number -128. Whereas the number remains positive, for example, that would represent that. Explain why sign and magnitude form is rarely used for computer arithmetic. 2 types of data in same byte. Explain why sign and magnitude form is rarely used for computer arithmetic. 2 types of data in the same byte. The MSB is a sign, must be treated differently from the rest of the byte. Makes arithmetic algorithms very complex. Extending the byte from 1 to 2 more bytes may be more bytes is very difficult. Carry the 1, I understand that. Explain the use of code to represent a character set. There is a need to represent text by appropriate binary codes. The most common are ASCII and in recent years Unicode. ASCII is a 7-bit code that uses single byte to represent a character. 8th most significant bit, originally used for error checking, is now commonly used to provide a further 128 characters in ASCII. The integer 0 represented by 00110000, 1 by it's just telling us about how ABCD and all the letters in the alphabet are represented by different integers in binary form, so that's pretty basic. 1 byte is too restrictive. Unicode. Explain what is meant by the character set of a computer. The symbols that the computer... Explain what is meant by the character set of a computer. The symbols that the computer can recognize and use. Each symbol is distinguishable from all others. Normally determinable by reference to character on keyboard, e.g. ASCII, Unicode, EBCDIC. By referencing to examples of applications that need character sets different sizes, explain how codes are used to represent character sets. Word processing, ATM terminal. Each character required is given a unique binary code. The more characters required, the more bits in each code. The number of bits used to represent the code establishes the size of a byte, e.g. ASCII. This will give ASCII 128 characters or 128 or double that if you're including caps. ATM uses 10 digits plus 6 codes, 4-bit characters. Number of characteristics will tend to be power of 2. allow keys to have different characters. A car insurance firm collects data from the customers and stores it on a computer. The customer name is stored using the computer's character set. Explain what is meant by a computer character set. Character set is the symbol that may be represented, interpreted, understood by a computer. Normally equates to the symbol on the keyboard, e.g. digits, letters, etc. May control characters. Explain the use of code to represent a character set. Each character has a binary code number which is unique. Number of bits used for each character is equal to 1 byte. Example code ASCII Unicode use 8 bits per character, 16 bits per character. Use of more bits for extended character set. Describe manual and automatic methods of gathering and inputting data into a computer system. Good formal design is essential. Forms need to be laid out so that data can be entered in a sensible, logical manner. Tab keys can be used to take users from item to item. Forms often reflect information held on paper, in which case they need to be laid out in a similar manner. Fields on forms are often validated before submission. Normally, forms cannot be submitted until all the necessary fields have been completed and validated. This ensures that all essential data has been entered. Voice recognition is often used by telephone online services to enter credit card information, for example, yes, no responses to questions. They have military applications. The most recent Eurofighter aeroplane uses pilot voice recognition systems for various cockpit functions. They can be of great benefit to disabled people who find it difficult or impossible to use a keyboard. Voice recognition software often needs to be trained by a user to recognize his or her particular voice or accent. Additionally, voice recognition in noisy environments is often very poor. Barcodes are used to encode a sequence of digits in the form of varying width light and dark width between light and dark strips. They have a multitude of uses in all aspects of life, from supermarkets to health service. They are normally read using lasers and often form part of a stock control inventory system. Formerly, one-dimensional, two-dimensional barcodes in the form of various geometric patterns are now in use. Optical mark recognition, OMR. This is OMR. OMR is systems are used to determine whether a given mark is positioned at a particular point on a pre-designed form. Commonly used for multiple choice examination questions, the OMR scans and shines a beam of light onto the form. The reflectivity of various parts of the form is used to determine whether a particular position represents a mark or not, since dark reflects less light than lighter areas. Optical character recognition set is OCR. Optical character recognition is the translation, usually of scanned electronic image of a typed or handwritten text onto an appropriate encoded form, usually ASCII or Unicode, that can be read by a word processor. In its simplest form, the light and dark areas of a scanned image are compared to a library of known shapes, and where matches occur, it is placed appropriately in a new document. OCR is used to encode all forms of written matter. Accuracy rates are extremely high in the case of well-presented typed text, where character recognition is relatively simple, but fall dramatically in the case of handwritten text, where characters can often be unrecognizable. So this is where you scan something in. Magnetic ink character recognition is primarily used by banking industry, where characters are written onto checks using magnetizable ink. These characters can be read by a device which magnetizes and identifies the character as it passes through the device. Error rates using such devices are very low. Touchscreens are another form of inputting data into a system. Touchscreens are often used where users are required to interact with the computer system, but only in predetermined ways, such as examples would include information kiosks, factory control systems, where it cannot be assumed that the user is experienced in the use of computers. A menu-based system is often used to take them through a list of options. More recently, touchscreen technology has been deployed in smartphones such as Apple iPhone and Google Android phones. In instances such as these, user interaction is very sophisticated and applications on devices are able to use touch sensitivity of a screen to create soft keyboard swipe recognition and a variety of techniques that give the user enormous flexibility in the use of their device. Chip and pin use a microchip embedded in the card to authenticate a user's 4-digit pin. When a user wishes to pay for a product, the card is inserted into a small card reader. The card accesses the chip on the card reader accesses the chip on the card, and the user is asked to enter their 4-digit pin. If the code matches, money is deducted from the user's account when the product is purchased. Sensors are devices that measure some physical quantity, converting the information into human usable form. For example, thermistor uses the change in resistivity of a wire to measure temperature. A thermometer uses the change in the level of mercury temperature. A photodetector senses light and is often used to detect when someone crosses a beam of light. A pressure sensor is often used to detect when someone approaches a door, which is then opened automatically. Data logging is the collection of data from one or more sensors at a regular time interval. In some instances, over a matter of seconds, where perhaps the machine producing engine parts needs continuously monitoring, and in other instances, over many hours or days, where a remote sensor is tracking the movement of a glacier. Describe the following, stating a suitable use for each. MICR stands for Magnetic Ink Character Reader. Magnetic Ink Character Reader, I need to know. Special characters on document are written using magnetizable ink, are both computer and human readable, e.g. account numbers on checks. OCR is optical character reader, and characters' shapes are scanned optically. Shapes are compared to those stored in computer's memory, e.g. reading documents into to be processed into a word processor file. So when you were to scan, if you were to scan a document, then it would come up in text form in Word or something. OMR is optical mark reader. Positions of marks on a document equate to information. Document is scanned for coordinates of marks, and this is an example of this is when you can use it for lottery tickets, when you highlight the little numbers, and basically where light isn't reflected, it presumes that there must be a number desirable there. OCR is a form of data input. Describe how OCR can help partially sighted people. It can be used to read printed documents. Can be used by blind people to read books. Data output can be turned into speech, enlarged for clearer effect. So you scan it and you enlarge it on like a Kindle or something. Describe the use of two peripheral devices that would be particularly useful for disabled people when using a computer. One would be a microphone. Instructions or data could be read into the computer. This means that the person could do commands without using their hands. Speakers, useful for visually impaired people. Instead of a monitor, the computer's telling them what's happening and what's been processed and stuff. A puff suck switch, it can be used as a form of input on a computer system for people that are paralysed and they've lost all kind of use of their limbs. So if they were Stephen Hawking, they could open a door or do yes or no commands depending on how fast they're breathing or how they're interacting with the puff suck switch. Questions on examination paper will have each have 4 possible answers labelling A, B, C, D. Explain why optical mark reading is a sensible way of marking candidates' papers and describe how marking is done. Correct responses will all be in predetermined positions which can be chosen simply by candidates. Answers are right or wrong. There is no area for debate. Useful statistics produced to inform future examination questions. Speed of marking, accuracy of marking are both increased. Scripts are batch processed, meaning they're done in a batch, obviously. Number positions shaded compared to correct positions. Number of correct positions added. Storing file in according to candidate number. So it's all done automatically. The candidate number's also there in red and everything. A system for keeping track of goods in a warehouse uses barcode readers to input data about goods going in and out of the warehouse. Describe how a barcode can be used to store data. Patterns of light and dark lines, pairs of which store digits. Used to store ID code, used to access record on file. Different widths, pair of widths use. Inclusion of check digit for automatic checking. Start and stop codes allow barcodes to be read both ways. Describe how data can be input into the system from barcode. Describe how the data can be input to the system from the barcodes. Laser, infrared light use reflections show up the thickness of lines. Guidelines to allow reading at an angle. Check digit calculation done for immediate checking of reading. Start and stop codes to decide direction of reading. Allow reversal of bars. Describe how data is collected to update the information stored about the stock in the warehouse. Database has entry for each ID number. When scanned, ID is found in database. Number of stock field is incremented if goods coming into the warehouse. Decremented if goods going out of the warehouse. So yeah, they buy the item that's sent to the HQ. Whatever. It's incremented if goods are coming in from the warehouse. Decremented if they're going out. And therefore the stock is always up to date. The thickness of sheets of glass produced by a manufacturing process is controlled by a computer which can adjust the distance apart 2 rollers between in which the glass is continuously rolled. The thickness of glass coming out from continually monitored. Explain what is meant by an actuator and why would you be used in this example. An actuator is a device which can be operated by a computer, produces physical movement. It's like an electric motor. It would be used to adjust the gap between rollers to control the rate at which the gas is fed through the roller. Adjust the gap between rollers. Okay, that's all I need to know. Glass is nominally 5mm thick. The sensor measure the thickness and return the readings to the computer. Explain why the processor is not set to maintain the thickness at exactly 5mm. The physical measurement is never exact. Unrealistic to expect exactly 5mm. Sensors not precise enough. Changing rollers would occur continuously, causing oscillation between greater than and larger than, smaller than. State a sensible range which the computer attempts to keep the thickness of the glass. Any sensible range is e.g. 5mm plus or minus 1 millimeter symmetrically, or something like that. Describe how the computer controls the thickness during the rolling process. The computer stores parameters between which the thickness is acceptable. Actual thickness input at regular intervals from sensors. Actual thickness compared with store values. If acceptable, then repeat. Else adjust rollers. Mark for idea of feedback. The operator of a machine can alter the thickness by inputting a different value into the computer. Describe how input can be verified in this example. Technician reads the value that has been input, checks against value on paper. Other technician also inputs it. Technician inputs value twice. System checks the two inputs are the same. Patient monitoring in an intensive care ward in a hospital is to be computerized. Important measurements are taken automatically from each of the patients in the ward. State two measurements which will be required and state the hardware required to capture each. Blood pressure would be you could use a pressure sensor to input that. Pulse, pressure device on the vein. Temperature, a thermistor or a thermometer. Breathing, sensor valve on a breathing tube to make sure the breathing's okay. The ward is to be run by one nurse. State two different forms of output which may be used to give the nurse information on patients. For each format, give an example of its use and state why it's appropriate. Sound might be used in an emergency problem. This gets immediate attention. Light, the problem with specific patient. That means a light can be output to highlight the nurse where the patient is. Graphical, present and recent past measures. Makes easy to spotting trends and stuff. Reports, give you text, hard copy and stuff. Explain techniques of validation and verification. Verification means checking that data is reasonable and complete. Validation checks include the following. Presence check, is the data present? Has the field been filled? Length check, is the data of a reasonable length? For example, username between 5 and 15 characters long. Format check, is the data in the correct format? E.g., a date might need to be in the form DDMM year. Range check, is the data in the correct range? E.g., a pensioner is someone over the age of 65, presumably younger than, say, 120. Existence check, does the data that has been entered match a previously recorded value? E.g., does the entering flight code match the flight that actually exists? Verification means that checking data is consistent. Verification is normally done by visually checking that the data is accurate and by entering a data item twice, for example when creating a new password. When data is input and must be verified and validated. When data is input, it must be verified and validated. When the details of a new customer are input into a system, the data must be verified. Describe one way that the data input can be verified. Double entry, details of input twice, check for any differences which will be reported for correction. Visual check, input data on screen checked against data form. Any differences must be recorded. One piece of data that is required by a car insurance company from its customer is the make of the car. Any existence check and presence check will be carried out on this. Data. Describe what is meant by an existence present check. Existence check means checks that the car exists by checking it against a list of possible car makes. Present check checks to ensure that values have been entered. Okay. Describe possible forms of output. Students will be required to draw upon their general knowledge of computing to suggest how and why certain forms of output are to be preferred over to others in a specific situations. Suppose, for example, that workers on the shop floor of a car assembly plant need to be trained prior to actually inserting an engine into a car. It might be wise to learn how to do so from a series of interactive presentations with sound, animations and videos showing the process in operation. Members of management might find it useful to have graphs and reports and perhaps images showing how many cars have been produced in the past 6 months and how production has varied over that time. Explain the procedures involved in backing up data and archiving. Backing up is the regular, frequent, usually at least weekly if not daily, copying of important data to the external device, which is then often removed for safekeeping. This means that the data can be restored if the original data is corrupted and damaged in any way. Archiving is the regular but usually infrequent, possibly every 6 month or yearly transfer and then removal from the system of data that is no longer in daily use but must be kept for legal or administrative reasons. Its main purpose is to free up space and improve the speed of access to data in the still in the system. The customer and order files used in an office are regularly backed up, while the data produced during operation of the manufacturing process is archived. Describe what is meant by backing up files, giving a reason why the customer and order files are backed up, making a copy of the data in a file and the file structure on a portable medium kept away from the originals, so that if the original is corrupted it can be replaced. Reason: customer and order files are very important to the company, so must be protected. Describe what is meant by archiving data and give a reason why this is done, giving a reason why the data from the manufacturing process is archived. Storing the data produced on a long-term storage so that it can be referred to if necessary is all that is. Workers are paid weekly. Their times at work over the week are collected and staff file is updated at the time of pay is calculated. Describe backing up routine. Describe a backing up routine which could be used for the staff file. Backup copy taken weekly immediately after updating the staff file. Multiple copies taken and stored in more than one location. At least one stored off-site, and mention of incremental backup. A student who stores all her work at schools and personal files on her computer. A student stores all of her schoolwork and personal files on her computer. State why the student should back up the data stored on the computer and describe a procedure that a student can follow in order to back up files. The reason why she needs to is because the data might become corrupted, the disk might crash and all the data could be lost. Take a copy of all the files onto removable storage, e.g. Solid state storage, pen drive, any kind of removable hard disk drive or something like that, at a regular interval, e.g. weekly. The backup should be kept away from the computer or in a secure location. And you can even do automatic or incremental backups, so like every week, or program it in to do that. Explain the need for companies to back up and archive customer data. and the procedures for carrying out these processes. Okay, the need for backup. Backup is necessary in case of corruption, either maliciously or accidentally. If destroyed, then the firm will have to shut. Archive necessary to keep copy of data for future use. Frees up space for new material by removing little or redundant data. Used by firm for mail shots the following year. The procedure for a backup, which you need to also explain, is the length of time between backups, possibly daily if you need that kind of scrutiny. The medium needs to be mentioned by me, so I would say something like an external hard drive. Mention of number of copies kept off site, so one kept off site, maybe one kept on site. Need to keep transaction logs between backups, and incremental backup is obviously what it is. Procedure for archiving is at longer interval. Oh, that was the procedure for backup, that last one. And now the procedure for an archive is at longer intervals, e.g. annually. Little used data, e.g. customers who have not received their policies. Written to long-term storage, e.g. DVD-R. These customers can be removed from the current files this way after this. And that's the end of Unit 3 in AF451.